Hey guys, what's up? Hey Dragon, I'm glad you're feeling good. Hey Jesse. You forgetting you're a mod. Feeling sassy. Does anybody know yet about what's going on with Todd Chrisley and KJ? I doubt the case is dismissed, but I'm just wondering if there's any updates. I couldn't find any. Yeah, she's stuck at 3A. Hey Erica. Hey Chicken Cakes. Hey Nana. Oh, I finally got that shirt in the mail. Hey, Patricia. So I ordered one so that you guys can sort of see what my March looks like. So I ordered the tank top and it says, "Wanna fight Luca?" I'm thinking you guys gotta see this. It's funny. Hey, Melanie. I can't see me. Weird. That one? There we go. Oh, wow. Look yellow. Hey, Brittany. So here's the shirt. I don't know. Can you see it? Try and back my ass up a bit. I just think it's funny. Hey, Flutterbear. Hey, Lori. I'm not sure if I did. Where'd you go? You tagged it on your last live. What I did was when it was on Amazon, there's like a share button. It's looks like the exact same. Well, I think it's funny. I want to get more. They're awfully expensive though. I need to lower the prices somehow, or put a sale on. I'm gonna put a sale on because I paid. I would never pay that for this shirt ever, ever. I'm cheap, but I did it because, well, I want to be able to see what the quality is, and you know what I mean. I'm not gonna just be like, "Hey, buy this." No, I wanted to check it out myself. Oh, your husband's depressed over that. Yeah, she's gone. I guess what is it? Charles now is going to be the king, or is the king? I think it should have been William myself. The funniest thing you've seen today, Warden. Oh, dealer? I'm going to put a sale on. I'm going to write it down so don't forget because I'm not letting you guys pay that amount of money. Especially when I'm not going to pay it myself. No, screw that. What the hell is wrong with this pen? No. You think KJ may have lost money? What do you mean, hun? Yeah, I haven't heard anything. Yeah, I am on Facebook actually. I don't care who knows my name or who wants to follow me on there. That's fine. So here you go. Wait, what the hell am I on there as? Oh. There you go. Now you guys can all stalk me. I'm just kidding. I never thought I would vote for anything. for that epic dancing chin hairless. Oh my god. I know, I've done it all day, every day, all day. Well, she was stuck what? Was it 6 yesterday or the day before? Can't remember. You think we'll hear about it tomorrow? Yeah, maybe. Well, I doubt it's good because this is for KG's trying to dismiss the case with Todd Chrisley, right? I doubt it's going to be dismissed. No, she screwed him over big time, and it's not even the sex tape and stuff. It's that calling him gay. It's the fact that she apparently had this source, which we all know she doesn't. So what are you going to do? Go up to the judge and be like, yeah. He'll be saying, so who's your source? We want the name, the number, the address. I don't know. So you're gonna is that what she's gonna say? I don't know. I forget. Like that's not gonna fly. You can't just say shit without any proof. She's gonna learn the hard way, it seems. Because as far as I know of, and from what I'm hearing, Todd Chrisley's not gonna stop. It was so hot today. Like it's been kind of like a lot cooler the past few days, and now today it was like almost 30 degrees. It was really hot. There's a dog walking by. Jack. What if she throws Uni under the bus? I think she already has. Um, because he's taken on the backlash. Because KJ started the shitstorm with this fraud, this whole fundraiser stuff, right? Calling it a fraud. Now she's not talking about the t-shirt or anything else, right? And Uni is. And he's taken all the backlash from it. I'm telling you, I totally believe that she set this up for Uni to take the fall. She'd open her mouth and watch all the dominoes fall in place. Hey, it's a stick. He has a nice bark to be so small. I know, right? It's a little dog that walked by another Shih Tzu. So I think he's in love. He slapped the like button. Oh my god. All right, I'm just going to take a couple sips of this, of my Diet Coke. And then I'll get reading. They throw one another under the bus. They play games. She knows she can't handle another lawsuit, so let Uni take the lawsuit. Yes, I totally agree, Erica. I tried asking Gigi if she knew child neglect was a crime and she deserved the maximum sentence, but the culty couldn't block my sock. I told her you're not supposed to drink on Adderall. You're not supposed to drink alcohol on Adderall. And she's like, I'm not allowed to do anything. What's her name? Nicole? I thought that was hilarious. I've been busy today, so I haven't even made a video or anything. All right. September 21st to the 26th, 1970. Finding nothing in Sandra Good's declaration that, in my opinion, constitutes contemptuous conduct on the part of Mr. Bugliosi, Judge Older dismissed Canarech's several motions. Again, Manson asked to see me in the lockup during the noon recess. He hoped I wasn't taking all this, the attempted murder, the knife incident, and the trial, personally. No, Charlie, I told him. I was assigned to this case. I didn't ask for it. This is my job. By now, it should be obvious to me, Manson said, that the girls were acting on their own, that nobody was dominating them. When I raised a skeptical eyebrow, Manson said, Look, Bugliosi, if I had all the power and control that you say I have, I could simply say, Brenda, go get Bugliosi, and that would be it. Hey, Catherine. I hope the judge asked to see KJ's degree. Can you imagine? Oh, that's good. Okay, nothing personal, but immediately after this, the middle of the night hang up calls began. They'd continue even after we changed our unlisted number. And several times when I left the Hall of Justice at night, I was followed by various family members, including Sandy. Only the first time disturbed me. Gail and the kids were circling the block in our car, and I was afraid they would be identified or the license number spotted. When I pretended not to see her, Gail quickly sized up the situation and drove around until I was able to shake my followers. Though, as she later admitted to me, she was far less cool than she appeared. Though concerned with the safety of my family, I didn't take any of this very seriously until one afternoon when, apparently enraged at the domination testimony that was coming in, Manson told a bailiff, I'm going to have Bugliosi and the judge killed. Oh, wow. I didn't know he threatened them. Holy shit. By telling a bailiff this, Manson was making sure we got the message. Older was already under protection. The next day, the district attorney's office assigned me a bodyguard for the duration of the trial. Additional precautions were taken, which, since they're probably used in protecting others, needn't be enumerated, though one might be noted. In order to prevent a repetition of the events at 10050 Cielo Drive, a walkie talkie was installed in our home, which provided instant communication with the nearest police station in case the telephone wires were cut. Wow, that's scary. Though Older and I were the only trial principals who had bodyguards, it was no secret that several, if not all, of the defense attorneys were frightened of the family. Dei Shin, I was told by one of his fellows, kept a loaded gun in each room of his house, in case of an unannounced visitation. What precautions, if any, Kenrick took I never learned, though Manson often assigned him top spot on his kill list. According to another defense attorney, Manson threatened numerous times to kill Kenrick. It was only fair, Manson supposedly said, since Kenrick was killing him in court. Manson at one point had Fitzgerald draw up papers for Kenrick's dismissal. According to Paul, who told the story to me, Kenrick literally got down on his knees and with tears in his eyes, begged Manson not to fire him. Manson relented, and though we continued to disagree, Kenrick remained on the case. Each week, a member of the Los Angeles Board of Supervisors issued a press release itemizing trial costs to date. Yet even with Kenrick's multitudinous objections, many of which called for lengthy conferences, we were covering a tremendous amount of testimony each day. A veteran court reporter said he'd never seen anything like it in 20-odd years. Thus far, Judge Older had done a remarkable job of holding Kenrick in check. Had he granted even half the evidentiary hearings Kenrick was always calling for, the 10 years estimates might have become a reality. Instead, each time Kenrick made the request, Older said, put your motion in writing and with supporting citations. Because of the time involved, Kenrick rarely took the trouble. All right, you have a good night, Jesse. For our part, although I'd originally planned to call some 100 witnesses, I'd cut that number down to about 80. In a case of this magnitude and complexity, this was a remarkable low number. Some days saw as many as half a dozen witnesses taking the stand. Whenever possible, I'd use a single witness for several purposes. In addition to his other testimony, for example, I asked DiCarlo the names and approximate ages of each of the family members, so it would be apparent to the jury that Manson, being older than all of them, was not likely to have played a subservient role. When I called Sheriff's Deputy William Gleason to testify that when Spawn Ranch was raided on August 16th, not one buck knife was found. Canarac, seeing the implication of this, objected and Older sustained the objection. I'd almost given up getting this in when Fitzgerald, apparently thinking the Absence of such knives was a plus for the defense. Asked on cross-examination, did you find any buck knives at the Spawn Ranch on the date of August the 16th, 1969? No, sir. The family's attempt to silence Barbara Hoyt backfired. Once a reluctant witness, she was now very willing to testify. Barbara not only confirmed Linda's story of the TB incident, she recalled that the previous night, the night of the Tate murders, Sadie called her on the field phone at the back house, asking her to bring 3 sets of dark clothing to the front of the ranch. When she arrived, Manson told her they already left. Barbara's story was both support for Linda Kasabian's testimony and powerful evidence of the Manson involvement, and though unsuccessful, Kinnerak fought hard to keep it out. I was not able to bring out the Myers Ranch conversation until after a full day of argument in chambers, and then, as I'd anticipated, I could only get in part of it. One afternoon in early September 1969, Barbara had been napping in the bedroom at Myers Ranch when she awoke to hear Sadie and Osich talking in the kitchen. Apparently thinking Barbara was still asleep, Sadie told Osich that Sharon Tate had been the last to die because, and to quote Sadie, she had to watch the others die. Trigger warning. I got this in finally. What I couldn't get in, because of Miranda, was the rest of the conversation. Barbara had also heard Sadie tell Osich that Abigail Folger had escaped and run out of the house, that Katie had caught up with her on the lawn, and that Abigail had struggled so much that Katie had to call for help from Tex, who ran over and stabbed Abigail. In chambers, Shin argued that he should be allowed to question Barbara about this. Older as well as the other defense attorney strongly disagreed. By Arandazizing the conversation and omitting all reference to her co-defendants, this put the onus for all 5 murders on Susan. Shinnick complained, adding, but the other people were there too, Your Honor. Thanks, Artistic. Buliosa says, they were day? Inadvertently, Shin had admitted that Susan Atkins was present at the Tate murder scene. Fortunately for both attorney and client, this dialogue took place in chambers and not in open court. As with the other ex-family members, I was able to bring in through Barbara numerous examples of Manson's domination, as well as a number of Manson's conversations about Helter Skelter. The one thing I couldn't get in was the family's attempt to prevent Barbara Hoyt from testifying. During his cross-examination of Barbara, Kinnerak attacked her for everything from her morals to her eyesight. Aware that Barbara had very poor vision, Kinnerak had her take off her glasses. Then he moved around the courtroom asking how many fingers he had up. Question, how many can you see now? Answer was 3. Kinnerak says, may the record reflect that she said 3 and I have 2 up clearly, Your Honor. The court, I thought I saw a thumb. Kinnerak finally proved Barbara had bad eyesight. The issue, however, wasn't her sight, but her hearing. She didn't claim to have seen Sadie or Oswich in the kitchen at Myers Ranch, only to have heard them. Kinnerak also asked Barbara, have you been in any mental hospital for the last couple of years? Ordinarily, I would have objected to such a question, but not this time, for Kinnerak had just opened wide the door through which I could, on redirect, bring in the murder attempt. Redirect is limited to the issues raised on cross-examination. For example, on redirect, I asked Barbara to approximate the distance between the bedroom and the kitchen at Myers Ranch, then conducted a hearing experiment. She passed with no trouble. Asking to approach the bench, I argued that since Kinnerak had implied that Barbara Hoyt was in a mental hospital for an extended period of time, I had the right to bring out that she was in a mental ward only overnight and that it was not because of a mental problem. Older agreed with one limitation. I couldn't ask who gave her the LSD. Once I'd brought out the circumstances of her hospitalization, I asked, did you take this overdose involuntarily? No. Was it given to you by someone else? Yes. Were you near death? Kinnerak calls for conclusion, Your Honor. The court sustained. It was good enough. I was sure the jury could put 2 and 2 together. On Saturday, September 26, 1970, an era came to an end. A raging fire swept Southern California. Lit by 80-mile-an-hour winds, a wall of flame as high as 60 feet charred over 100,000 acres. Burned in the inferno was all of Spawn's movie ranch. As the ranch hands tried to save the horses, the Manson girls, their faces illuminated by the light of the conflagration, danced and clapped their hands, crying out happily, Helter Skelter is coming down. Helter Skelter is coming down. September 27th, October 5th, 1970. Juan Flynn, who described his job at Spawn Ranch as maneuver shoveler, seemed to enjoy himself on the stand. Of all the witnesses, however, the lanky Panamanian cowboy was the only one who openly showed animosity to Manson. When Charlie tried to stare him down, Juan glared back. After positively identifying the revolver, Juan remarked, and Mr. Manson, on one occasion, fired this gun, in my direction. You see, because I was walking with a girl on the other side of the creek. It was difficult to stop Juan once he got started. The girl had come to Spawn Ranch to ride horses. She'd ignored Manson but went off down the creek with an enormous minded Juan. Charlie was so miffed, he'd fire several shots in their direction. Kenrick succeeded in having all of this, except once seeing Manson fire the revolver struck. He also tried but failed to keep out the two most important pieces of evidence Juan Flynn had to offer. One night in early August 1969, Juan had been watching TV in the trailer when Sadie came in, dressed in black. Where are you going? Juan asked. We're going to get some fucking pigs, Sadie replied. When she left, Juan looked out the window and saw her get into Johnny Swartz's old yellow Ford. Charlie, Clem, Tex, Linda, and Leslie got in also. According to Juan, the incident had occurred after dark, about 8 or 9 p.m., and though he wasn't able to pinpoint the date, he said it was about a week before the August 16th raid. The logical inference was that he was describing the night of the LaBiancas, when the LaBiancas were killed. Okay, Dragon. One story was important both as evidence and as independent corroboration of Linda Kasabian's testimony. Not only did the time, participants, vehicle, and color of Susan Atkins' clothing coincide, Juan also noticed that Manson was driving. Juan then testified to the kitchen conversation which occurred a day or so later. When putting a knife to his throat, Manson told him, You son of a bitch, don't you know I'm the one who's doing all of these killings? The newsman rushed for the door. Manson admitted murders, Spawn Ranch cowboy claims. Kenrick's objections kept out another piece of extremely damaging evidence. One night in June or July 1969, Manson, Juan, and three male family members were driving through Chatsworth when Charlie stopped in front of a rich house and instructed Juan to go in and tie the people up. When he'd finished, Manson said, he was to open the door and, to quote Manson, We'll come in, cut the motherfucking pigs up. Juan had said no thanks. This was, in effect, a dress rehearsal for the Tate LaBianca murders. But ruling that the oh my god, I can't say that. The yeah, I'm not even gonna bother. The effect far outweighs the probative value. Older wouldn't permit me to question Juan about this. I was also unable, for the same reason, to get in comment Manson made to Juan. Adolf Hitler had the best answer to everything. That answer, of course, was murder. But owing to Kenrick's objections, neither of these two incidents was heard by the jury or ever made public. On cross-examination, Fitzgerald brought out an interesting anomaly. Even after Manson had allegedly threatened him, not once but several times, Juan still stuck around. After the raid, he even accompanied the family to Death Valley, remaining with them a couple of weeks before splitting to John Crockett, Poston, and Watkins. That had puzzled me too. One possible explanation was that, as Juan testified, at first he thought Manson was bullshitting about the murders, that nobody in their right mind is going to kill somebody and then boast about it. Also, hey Britt. Also, Juan was easygoing and slow to anger. Probably more important, Juan was an independent cuss, like Paul Crockett, who didn't leave Death Valley until long after Manson threatened to kill him. He didn't like to be intimidated. Kenrick picked up on Fitzgerald's discovery. Now, Mr. Flynn, were you scared to be at the Myers Ranch with Mr. Manson? Well, I was aware and precautious. Just answer the question, Mr. Flynn. I understand you were an actor, but would you just answer the question, please? Well, I liked it there, because I wanted to think nice things, but every time I walked around the corner, well, that seemed to be the main subject, about how many times they could do me in. Then finally, I just left. Now, Mr. Flynn, will you tell me how you were aware and precautious? How did you protect yourself? Well, I just protected myself by leaving. Kenrick brought out that when Flynn was interviewed by Sartucci, he said nothing about Manson putting a knife to his throat. You were holding that back. Is that it, Mr. Flynn? To spring on us in the courtroom, is that right? No, I told the officers about this before, you see. Ignoring Flynn's response, Kenrick said, You mean, Mr. Flynn, that you made it up for the purposes of this courtroom. Is that correct, Mr. Flynn? Kenrick was charging that Flynn had recently fabricated his testimony. I made a note of this, though as yet unaware how important this bit of dialogue would soon be. After focusing on all the things I had brought out, which were not in the Sartucci Interview. Kenrick asked Juan when he first mentioned the knife incident to anyone.
Hello. Sorry it took so long.
Oh no, it's okay. My volume's really low. Let me turn that up.
Yeah,
Yeah. There we go.
Ellie made a card.
Aww. Again, you can interrupt me anytime you want. If
Yeah.
you have something to say or whatever, yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Well, there was some officers in Shoshone, BC, and I talked to them. Flynn, however, couldn't recall their names. Canerick strongly implied several times that Flynn was fictionalizing his story. Juan didn't take kindly to being called a liar. You could see his temper rising. Intent on proving that Flynn was testifying so he could further his movie career, Juan had bit parts in several westerns. Canerick asked, "You recognize, do you not, that there's lots of publicity in this case against Mr. Manson, right?" "Well, it is a type of publicity that I wouldn't want, you big catfish." The court. On that note, Mr. Kenrick, we will adjourn. After court, I questioned Juan about the Shoshone interview. He thought one of the officers was from the California Highway Patrol, but he wasn't sure. That evening, I called the DA's office in Independence and learned that the man who had interviewed Juan was a CHP officer named Dave Stuber. Late that night, I found they located him in Fresno, California. Yes, he'd interviewed Flynn, as well as Crockett, Poston, and Watkins on December 19th, 1969. He taped the whole conversation, which had lasted over 9 hours. Yes, he still had the original tapes. I checked my calendar. I guess Flynn would be on the stand another day or two. Could Stober be in LA in 3 days with the tapes and prepared to testify? Sure, Stober said. Stober then told me something I found absolutely incredible. He had already made a copy of the tapes and given it to LAPD on December 29th, 1969. Later, I learned the identity of the LAPD detective to whom the tapes had been given. The officer, since deceased, recalled receiving the tapes but admitted he hadn't played them. He thought he had given them to someone but couldn't remember to whom. All he knew was that he no longer had them. Perhaps it was because the interview was so long, 9 hours, or perhaps it being the holiday season. In the confusion, they were mislaid. Neither explanation, however, raises the unpleasant fact that as early as December 1969, the Los Angeles Police Department had a taped interview containing a statement in which Manson implied that he was responsible for the Tate LaBianca murders, and as far as can be determined, no one even bothered to book it into evidence, much less play it. Ordinarily, there would have been no way could introduce the Stober tape into evidence at the trial, for you cannot use a previously consistent statement to bolster a witness testimony. However, there is an exception to that rule. Such evidence is admissible if the opposing side contends that the witness testimony was recently fabricated and the prior consistent statement was made before the declarant had any reason to fabricate. When Canarac asked, "You mean, Mr. Flynn, that you made it up for the purposes of this courtroom? Is that correct, Mr. Flynn?" He was charging recent fabrication and opening the door for me to bring the prior consistent statement in. A lot of doors were open on cross-examination, but at first the biggest did not look like a door at all. The defense had made much of the fact that Juan didn't tell his story to the authorities until long after events occurred. With this opening, I argued, I should be allowed to bring out the reason why. He was in fear of his life. Responding to Canarac's objection, Older said, "You can't go into all of these things on cross and expect the other side to do nothing about them. Mr. Canarac, you can't paint them in a corner and say they can't work their way out." Juan was printed to testify that he didn't go into the police because I didn't think it was safe for me to do that, you see. I got a couple threat notes. Actually, Juan had received 3 such notes, all handed him by family members. The last as late as 2 weeks ago, when Squeaky and Larry Jones had discovered that Juan was living in John Swartz's trailer in Canoga Park. Arguing against their admission, Fitzgerald made an interesting statement. "My life has been threatened 3 times, and I haven't come forward and talked about it." Bugliosi asked, "Has the prosecution threatened you?" Fitzgerald, "No, I am not saying that." He didn't elaborate. Older wrote that Juan could testify to the notes, though not to the identities of the persons who gave them to him. Juan also testified to the hang-up calls, the cars that raced past in the night, their occupants oinking and screaming, "Motherfucker" and "pig." I asked him, "And you consider these threats, is that correct?" "Well, they sounded, pretty strong to me." "Are those among the reasons why you didn't want to come down to talk?" "Well, this was one of the reasons, yes." Because of fear of your life? Yes. When I asked about the other reasons, one described how Manson and Clem and Tex had creepy crawled Crockett's cabin at Barker Ranch. All of this came in because the defense so gratuitously opened the door and crossed. Because Kenrick had questioned Juan about Manson's programming of family members, I was able to bring in a conversation Manson had with Juan in which he explained that he had no unprogram his followers to remove the programming placed upon them by their parents, schools, churches, and society. To get rid of the ego, Manson told him, you had to obliterate all the wants that you had. Give up your mother and your father, all the inhibitions, just blank yourself out. Since Manson's techniques differed depending on whether his subject was male or female, I asked what Manson had said about unprogramming the girls. I didn't anticipate that Juan would go into the detail he did. Well, he says, to get rid of the inhibitions, Well, he says, to get rid of the inhibitions, you could just take a couple of the girls and, have them lay down, and have them eat each other. Oh, have them eat each other, or for me to take a girl up the hills, and just lie back and let her suck my dick all day long. Wow, that's nice.
Ugh.
Wasn't expecting that.
Trigger warning
Yeah, big.
for sexual innuendo.
Yeah. Hey, Nancy. Shoot, I lost my place. Canarac, Your Honor, may we approach the bench, Your Honor? Early, one of the alternative jurors had written Judge Older a letter complaining about the sexual explicitness of some of the testimony. I didn't look at him, but I suspected he must be having aplexy. As I passed the counsel table on the way to the bench, I told Manson, don't worry, Charlie, I'm keeping all the bad stuff out. Older struck the entire answer as non-responsive. I asked Juan, did Mr. Manson discuss with you, without going into what he said, Juan, plans that he had no unprogrammed the people in the family? When he replied yes, I let it go at that. What Manson never explained to his family was that in the process of unprogramming them, he was reprogramming them to be his abject slaves. Throughout his cross-examination, Canarac had implied, as he had with many of the earlier witnesses, that Juan had been coached by me. I thought Canarac was going to do this again for the upteenth time, when on recross he started, Mr. Flynn, when a question is asked of you that you think may not help in prosecution, in this case, Bugliosi, oh, stop arguing. Canarac, Your Honor, he's interrupting. Bugliosi, be quiet. The court, Mr. Bugliosi. Now, I'm not going to warn you again, sir. And Bugliosi says, what is he doing, Your Honor? He's accusing me of something, and I don't like it. The court says, approach the bench. Bugliosi states, I'm not going to take it. I've had it up to here. My indignation was as much a matter of trial tactics as anything else. If I let Canarac get away with the same trick time after time, the jury might assume there was some truth to his charges. At the bench, I told Older, I'm not going to be accused of serious offenses by this guy, day in and day out. The court states, that's absurd. You interrupted Mr. Canarac. You made outrageous statements in front of the jury. I find you in direct contempt of court, and I fine you $50. Now Bugliosi some shit. Oh my god. To the amusement of the clerk, I had to call my wife to come down and pay the fine. Later, the deputy DAs in the office put up $1 each for Bugliosi defense fund and reimbursed her. As with the earlier citation of Hughes, I felt if I was in contempt of anyone, it was Canarac, not the court. The following day, for the record, I responded to the contempt, noting among other things that in the future I would ask the court to please consider 2 obvious points. This is a hotly contested trial, and tempers become a little frayed, and also take into consideration what Mr. Canarac is doing, which incites a response on my part. With my citation, we now had a perfect score. Every attorney involved in the trial had been either cited for contempt or threatened with it. The defense tried their best to ridicule Juan's fear of Manson. Hughes brought out that since Manson was locked up, it was hardly likely he could hurt anyone. Did Flynn actually expect the jury to believe that he was afraid of Manson? Juan might have been speaking for all of the prosecution witnesses when he answered, well, not of Mr. Manson himself, but the reach that he has, By now, I could see the pattern. The more damaging the testimony, the more chance Manson would create a disturbance, therefore assuring that he, and not the evidence itself, would get the day's headlines. One, Flynn's testimony was hurting him badly. Several times while Flynn was on the stand, Older had to order Manson and the girls removed because of their outbursts. When it happened again on October 2nd, Manson turned to the spectators and said, "Look at yourselves. Where are you going? You're going to destruction. That's where you're going." He then smiled, a very odd little smile, and added, "It's your judgment day, not mine." Again, the girls parroted Manson, and Older ordered all four removed. Canarac was livid. I just showed the judge the transcripts pages where Canarac accused Flynn of lying. Older ruled, "There is no question. There was an implied, if not expressed, charge of recent fabrication." Highway Patrolman Dave Stober would be permitted to play that portion of the tape interview dealing with Manson's incriminating admission. Stober had been investigating a stolen auto report, not murder, when he talked to Flynn, Poston, Crockett, and Watkins in Shoshone. However, realizing the importance of their story, he had spent over 9 hours quizzing them on their knowledge of Manson and his family. After the trial, I wrote a letter to the California Highway Patrol, commending Stober for the excellent job he had done. After establishing the circumstances of the interview, hey Crystal, Stober set up the tape recorder and began playing the tape at the point where the statement had began. This is something about such physical evidence that deeply impresses the jury. Again, in words very similar to those they had heard him use when he was on the stand, the jurors heard Juan say, "Then he was looking at me real funny. And then he grabbed me by the hair, like that, and he put a knife by my throat. And then he says, 'Don't you know I'm the one who's doing all the killings?'" Monday, October 5th, 1970. Bailiff Bill Murray later said he had a very strong feeling that something was going to happen. "You get a kind of sixth sense dealing with prisoners day after day," he said, noting that when he brought Manson into the lockup, he was acting very tense and edgy. Although they had made no assurances that they would conduct themselves properly, Older gave the defendants still another chance, permitting them to return to the courtroom. The testimony was dull, undramatic. There was, at this point, no clue as to its importance, though. I had a feeling Charlie just might suspect what I was up to. There was a series of witnesses. I was laying the groundwork for destroying Manson's anticipated alibi. LASO Detective Paul Whitley had just finished testifying, and the defense attorneys had declined to cross-examine him when Manson asked, "May I examine him, Your Honor?" The court says, "No, you may not." Manson stated, "You're going to use this courtroom to kill me." Older told the witness he could step down. Manson asked the question a second time, adding, "I'm going to fight for my life one way or another. You should let me do it with birds." The court, "If you don't stop, I will have you removed." Manson, "I will have you removed if you don't stop. I have a little system of my own." Wow. Not until Manson made that very startling admission did I realize that this time he wasn't play acting, but deadly serious. The court, "Call your witness. Bugliosi, Sergeant Gutierrez." Manson, "Do you think I'm kidding?" It happened in less time than it takes to describe it. With a pencil clutched in his right hand, Manson suddenly leaped over the counsel table in the direction of Judge Holder. He landed just a few feet from the bench, falling on one knee. As he was struggling to his feet, Bailiff Bill Murray leaped too, landing on Manson's back. Two other deputies quickly joined in, and after a brief struggle, Manson's arms were pinned. As he was being propelled to the lockup, Manson screamed at Older, "In the name of Christian justice, someone should cut your head off." Adding the Bedlam, Atkins, Carmichael, and Van Houten stood and began chanting something in Latin. Older, much less disturbed than I would have expected, gave them not one but several chances to stop, then ordered them removed also. According to the bailiffs, Manson continued to fight even after he had been taken into the lockup, and it took 4 men to put cuffs on him. Fitzgerald asked if counsel might approach the bench. For the record, Judge Older described exactly how he had viewed the incident. Fitzgerald asked if he might inquire as to the judge's state of mind. "He looked like he was coming for me. I was afraid that, and although the court, if he had taken one more step, I would have done something to defend myself." Because of the judge's state of mind, Fitzgerald said, he felt it incumbent upon him to move for a mistrial. Hughes, Shin, and Canarac joined. Older replied, "It isn't going to be that easy, Mr. Fitzgerald. They are not going to profit from their own wrong." Denied. Out of curiosity, after court, Murray measured the distance of Manson's leap. It was 10 feet. Murray wasn't too surprised. Manson had a very powerful leg and arm muscles. He was constantly exercising in the lockup. Asked why, he once told a bailiff, "I'm toughening myself up for the desert." Murray tried to recreate his own leap. Without that sudden shot of adrenaline, he couldn't even jump up on the counsel table. Though Judge Older instructed the jury to disregard what you saw and what you have heard here this morning, I knew that as long as they lived, they'd never forget it. All the masks had been dropped. They'd seen the real face of Charles Manson. From a reliable source, I learned that after the incident, Judge Older began wearing a 38 caliber revolver under his robes, both in court and in chambers. Judgment Day. Echoing Manson, the girls waiting outside on the corner spoke of it in conspiratorial whispers. Wait till Judgment Day. That's when Helter Skelter will really come down. Judgment Day. What was it? A plan to break up Manson? An orgy of retribution? As important was the question of when. The day the jury returned, the verdict of not guilty or guilty, or, if the latter, the day the same jury decided life or death, or perhaps the day of sentencing itself, or might it even be tomorrow? Judgment Day. We began to hear those words more and more often, without explanation, as yet unaware that the first phase of Judgment Day had already begun, with the theft from Camp Pendleton Marine Base of a case of hand grenades. Holy crap, they got hand grenades? Oh my god. Some weeks earlier, on returning to my office after court, I found a phone message from attorney Robert Steinberg, who was now representing Virginia Graham. On the advice of her previous attorney, Virginia Graham had withheld some information. Steinberg had urged her to give this information to me. Specifically, the phone message read, Susan Atkins laid out detailed plans to Miss Graham concerning other planned murders, including the murders of Frank Sinatra and Elizabeth Taylor. I didn't know that.
Good thing they escaped that because Frank died in 1998 and Liz died, I think, in 2011.
Oh, did she? Okay. I didn't know that. Since I was
Yeah,
very
Leigh
busy.
Graham was a big Sinatra fan.
Oh, really?
She hated Elizabeth Taylor, but she loves Sinatra.
Yeah, I actually read the book. I have the novel on Elizabeth Taylor. I read it. It was all right. Since I was very busy, I arranged to have one of the co-prosecutors, Steve Kay, interview her. According to Virginia, a few days after Susan Atkins told her about the Hinman, Tate, and LaBianca murders, probably on November 8th or 9th, 1969, Susan had walked over to Virginia's bed at Sybil Brand and begun leafing through a movie magazine. It reminded her, Susan said, about some other murders she had been planning. Yeah, hand grenades. Can you imagine? How the fuck they get those? She had decided to kill Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. Susan matter of factly stated she was going to heat a knife red hot and put it against the side of Elizabeth Taylor's face. This was more or less to leave her mark. Then she'd carve the words Helter Skelter on her forehead, after which she was going to gouge her eyes out. Trigger warning. Charlie had shown her how, and Virginia interrupted to ask what Richard Burton was supposed to be doing during all this. Oh, both would be tied up, Susan said. Only this time, the rope would be around their necks and their feet so they couldn't get away, like the others. Then Susan continued. She would castrate Burton, placing his penis as well as Elizabeth Taylor's eyes in a bottle. And dig this, would you? Susan laughed, and then I'd mail it to Eddie Fisher. Holy, these people are fucked.
By the way, Eddie Fisher is the father of Carrie Fisher and the grandfather
Oh,
of Billy
shit.
Ward. Yeah, Space Mom.
Wow. See, Heavenly Cow.
Yeah, he married Debbie Reynolds and they had two kids, Todd and Carrie.
Wow. As for Tom Jones, another of her intended victims, she planned to force him to have sex with her at knife point, and then, just as he was climaxing, she would slit his throat. Holy shit, these people are whacked. Like, this is bad.
By the way, trigger warning,
Yeah.
disturbing images.
Steve McQueen was
Well,
also on the
disturbing
list.
words than images.
Yeah. Holy, so Steve McQueen was also on the list. Before Susan could explain what she had in mind for McQueen, Virginia interrupted with saying, Sadie, you just can't walk up to these people and kill them. That would be no problem, Susan said. It was easy to find out where they lived. Then she simply creepy called them, just like I did to Tate. She had something choice for Frank Sinatra, Susan continued. She knew that Frank liked girls. She'd just walk up to his door and knock. Her friends, she said, would be waiting outside. Once inside, they'd hang Sinatra upside down. Then, while his own music was playing, holy shit, skin him alive.
Okay. If
Wow.
anybody has a weak stomach, please leave the
These people
chat.
are not, yeah, these people are just not right in the head.
That's just,
It's disgusting.
yeah, it's like almost like Game of Thrones with the Boltons.
Yeah. So after they skin him alive, after which they'd make purses out of the skin and sell them to hippie shops so everyone would have a little piece of Frank. Holy crap. She had come to the conclusion, Susan said, that the victims had to be people of importance so the whole world would know. Shortly after this, Virginia terminated the conversation with Susan. When asked by Steve Kay why she hadn't come forward with the story before this, Virginia explained that it was just so insane that she didn't think anyone would believe her. Even her former attorney had advised her not to say anything about it. Were these Sadie's own plans or Charlie's? Knowing as much as I did about Susan Atkins, I doubted if all this came from her. Though I had no proof, it was reasonable inference that she had probably picked up these ideas from Manson. In any case, matter. Reading a transcript of the taped interview, I knew it never to be able to introduce any of this evidence. Legally, its relevance to the Tate LaBianca murders was negligible, and whatever limited prevalence it did have would be outweighed by its extremely prejudiced effect. Though Virginia Graham's statement was useless as evidence, a copy of it was made available to each of the defense attorneys under discovery. It would soon make its own kind of legal history. Although it was Ronnie Howard who at first went to the police, I called Virginia Graham to the stand first, since Susan had initially confessed to her. Her testimony was unusually dramatic, since this was the first time the jury had heard what happened inside the Tate residence. Since their testimony was only against Susan Atkins, only Shin cross-examined Graham and Howard. His attack was less on their statements than their backgrounds. He brought out, for example, 16 different aliases Ronnie Howard had used. He also asked her if she made a lot of money as a prostitute. Asking him to approach the bench, Older said, "You know the rules, Mr. Shin. Don't give me that wide-eyed innocent stare and pretend you don't know what I'm talking about. Does your honor mean I cannot ask a person for their occupation?" The prosecution had made no deals with either Virginia Graham or Ronnie Howard. Howard had been acquitted on the forgery charge, while Graham had served out her full sentence at Corona. In both cases, however, Shin did bring up the reward. When he asked Ronnie if she knew about the $25,000, she bluntly answered, "I think I'm entitled to it." On redirect, I asked each, "Are you aware that testifying in court is not a prerequisite to collecting the money?" Objection sustained, but the point was made. The letters Susan Atkins had written to her former cellmates, Ronnie Howard, Joe Stevenson, and Kit Fletcher, were very incriminating. Although I was prepared to call a handwriting expert to testify to their authenticity, Shin, in order to save time, stipulated that Susan had written them. However, before they could be introduced into evidence, we had to arrandize them, exercising any references to Atkins' co-defendants. This was done in chambers outside the presence of the jury. Kinnerik fought to exclude almost every line. Disgusted at his constant objections, Fitzgerald complained to Older, "I don't have the rest of my life to spend here." Older, equally disgusted, told Kinnerik, "I would suggest that you use a little more discretion and not try to clutter up the record with motions, objections, and statements which any 10-year-old child can see are either nonsense or totally irrelevant." Sorry. Yet time again, Kinnerik pointed out subtleties the other defense attorneys missed. For example, Susan had written Ronnie, "When I first heard you were the informer, I wanted to slit your throat." Then I snapped that I was the real informer and it was my throat I wanted to cut. "You don't inform on yourself," Kanerick argued. "You confess." This implied that other people were involved. After 19 pages of argument, much of it very sophisticated, we finally edited this particular section to read, "When I first heard you were the informer, I wanted to slit your throat. Then I snapped that it was my throat I wanted to cut." Kanerick wanted the line "love, love, love" excluded from the Stevenson letter because it refers to Manson. The court, "It sounds more like Gertrude Stein." Since the love references were among the few favorable things in Susan's letters, Shin fought to retain them, remarking, "What do you want to do, make a killer out of her?" Liz Sinatra on the slate list. The Los Angeles Herald-Examiner broke the story on October 9th in an exclusive article bearing by the line of reporter William Farr. Learning the night before that the story was going to appear, Judge Older again ordered the windows of the jury bus covered so the jurors couldn't see the headlines on corner newsstands. Farr's article contained direct quotes from the Virginia Graham statement, which he had turned over to the defense on discovery. Questioned in chambers, Farr declined to identify source or sources. After observing that under California law he could not order the reporter to do so, Older excused Farr. It was obvious that one or more persons had violated the gag order. Older, however, did not press the issue, and there it appeared the matter rested. There was no indication at this time that the issue would eventually become a cause célèbre and rested in the jailing of Farr. Prior to his questioning by Older, Farr told Virginia Graham's attorney, Robert Steinberg, that he had received the statement from one of the defense attorneys. He did not say which one. Greg Jacobson was an impressive and very important witness. I had the tall, modestly dressed talent scout testifying in detail to his many conversations with Manson during which they discussed Helter Skelter, the Beatles, Revelation 9, and Manson's curious attitude toward death. Hatimi followed Jacobson to the stand to testify to his confrontation with Manson at 10050 Cielo Drive on the afternoon of March 23, 1969. For the first time, the jury and the public learned that Sharon Tate had seen the man who was later ordered to her murder. In Rudy Altobelli, Kinnerik finally met his match. On direct examination, the owner of 10050 Cielo Drive testified to his first encounter with Manson at Dennis Wilson's home, and then, in considerable detail, he described Manson's appearance at the guest house the evening before he and Sharon left for Rome. Extremely antagonistic, because Altobelli had refused him permission to visit 10050 Cielo Drive, Kinnerik asked, "Now, presently, the premises on Cielo Drive, where you live, are quite secure, is that correct?" "I hope so." "Do you remember having a conversation with me when I tried to get into your fortress out there?" "I remember your insinuations or threats." "What were my insinuations or threats?" "That we will take care of you, Mr. Altobelli. We will see about you, Mr. Altobelli. We will get the court up at your house and have the trial at your house, Mr. Altobelli." Altobelli and told Kinnerik that if the court ordered it, he would be glad to comply. Otherwise, no, it's his home. It is a home. It's not going to be a tourist attraction or a freak show. "Do you respect our courts of law, Mr. Altobelli?" "I think more than you, Mr. Kinnerik." Despite the defense objections, I had succeeded in getting in perhaps 95% of the testimony I'd hoped to elicit through Jacobson, Hatimi, and Altobelli. With the next witness, I suddenly found myself in deep trouble. Charles Cohen took the stand to testify to finding Rosemary LaBianca's wallet in the women's restroom of the Standard Station in Silmer, where he worked. He described how, on lifting the top of the toilet tank, he'd seen the wallet wedged above the mechanism just above the water line. Kinnerik cross-examined Cohen at great length about the toilet, causing more than a few snickers among spectators and press. Then I suddenly realized what he was getting at. Kinnerik asked Cohen if there was a standard procedure in connection with servicing the toilets in the restroom. Cohen replied that the standard station operating manual required that the restroom be cleaned every hour. The bluing agent, which is kept in the tank of the toilet, Cohen further testified, had to be replaced whenever it ran out. "How often was that?" Kinnerik asked. As lead man or boss of the station, Cohen had not personally cleaned the restrooms, but rather had delegated the task to others. Therefore, I was able to object to this and similar questions as calling for a conclusion for Cohen's part. Fortunately, the court then recessed for the day. Immediately afterward, I called LAPD with an urgent request. I wanted the detectives to locate and interview every person who had worked in this particular station between August 10th, 1969, the date Linda Kasabian testified she left the wallet there, and December 10th, 1969, the date Cohen found it. I wanted them interviewed before Kinnerik could get to them. Fearing that he might put words in their mouths, I told the officers, "Tell them, forget what the standard station operating manual says you should do. Forget, too, what your employer might say if he found you didn't follow the instructions to the letter. Just answer truthfully. Did you personally, at any time during your employment, change the bluing agent in that toilet?" To replace the bluing agent, you had to lift the top of the tank. Had anyone done so, he would have immediately seen the wallet. If Kinnerik could come up with just one employee who claimed to have replaced the bluing agent during that 4-month period, the defense could forcibly contend that the wallet had been planted, not only destroying Linda Kasabian's credibility to all of her testimony, but implying that the prosecution was trying to frame Manson. LAPD located some, but not all of the former employees. None had ever changed the bluing agent. Fortunately, Kinnerik apparently had no better luck. Hughes had only a few questions for Cohen, but they were devastating. Now Silmer is predominantly a white area, is it not? Yeah, I guess so. Somer is not a black ghetto, is it? No. According to Linda, Manson had wanted a black to find the wallet and use their credit cards so blacks would be blamed for the murders. My whole theory of the motive was based on this premise. Why then had Manson left the wallet in a white area? In point of fact, the freeway exit Manson had taken was immediately north of Tacoma, the black ghetto of the San Fernando Valley. I tried to get this in through Coing, but the defense objections kept it out, and I later had to call Sergeant Patchett to so testify. With a single witness, a service station attendant, the defense, specifically Kinnerik and Hughes, had almost knocked two huge holes in the prosecution's case. By now I had narrowed down my opponents. Fitzgerald made a good appearance but rarely scored. Shin was likable for his first trial. Hughes was doing damn well, but it was Irving Kinnerik, whom most members of this press consider the trial's buffoon, who was scoring nearly all the points. Time and again, Kinnerik succeeded in keeping out important evidence. For example, when Stephanie Scram took the stand, Kinnerik objected to her testimony regarding the murder school Manson had conducted at Barker Ranch, and Older sustained Kinnerik's objection. Though I disagreed with Older's whirling, there was no way I could get around it. On direct, Stephanie had testified that she and Manson returned to Spawn Ranch from San Diego in a cream-colored van on the afternoon of Friday, August 8th. On cross-examination, Fitzgerald asked her, "Could you be mistaken one day?" This indicated to me that Manson might still be planning to go alibi, so on redirect, I brought in the traffic ticket they had been given the previous day. With the August 8th arrest report on Brunner and Good, which contained the license plate of the same van, I was now ready to demolish Charlie if the defense claimed that he wasn't even Southern California at the time of the murders. Yet I had no way of knowing whether Manson might have his own surprise bombshell, which he was waiting to explode. As it happened, he had. Sergeant Gutierrez on the Helter Skelter door, Dwayne Wolfer on the sound test he conducted at the Tate residence, Gerald Friedman on the last phone call Stephen Parent made, Rosemary Walker on the Atkins remarks about the eyeglasses, Harold True on Manson's visit to the house next to the La Bianca residence, Sergeant McKellar on Carmichael's attempts to avoid recognition just prior to her arrest in Mobile, Alabama. Bits and pieces, but cumulative and eventually, I hoped, convincing. Only a few prosecution witnesses remained, and I still didn't know what the defense would be. Although the prosecution had to give the defense a list of all our witnesses, the defense had no such obligation. Earlier, Fitzgerald had told the press that he intended to call 30 witnesses, among them such celebrities as Mama Cass, John Phillips, and Beatle John Lennon, the latter to testify as to how he impressed his own song lyrics. But that and the rumors that Manson himself planned to testify were the only clues to the defense. And even Manson testifying was an iffy thing. In my talks with Charlie, he seemed to vacillate. Maybe I'll testify, maybe I won't. I continued to goad him, but was worried that perhaps I'd overplayed my hand. The defendants had been in court since Manson's attack on the judge. The day Terry Melcher was to testify, however, Older permitted their return. Not wanting to face Manson, Terry asked me, "Can't I go back in the lockup and testify through the speaker?" Of all the prosecution witnesses, Melcher was the most frightened of Manson. His fear was so great, he told me, that he had been under psychiatric treatment and had employed a full-time bodyguard since December 1969. "Terry, they weren't after you that night," I tried to reassure him. "Manson knew you were no longer living there." Melcher was so nervous, however, that he had to be given a tranquilizer before taking the stand. Though he came over somewhat weaker than in our interviews, when he finished his testimony, he told me, with evident that Manson had smiled at him, therefore he couldn't be too unhappy with what he had said. Kinnerik, probably at Manson's request, did not question Melcher. He was brought out that when Wilson and Manson drove to Terry to the gate of 10050 Cielo Drive that night, they probably saw him push the button. The defense could now argue that if Manson was familiar with the gate operating device, it would be unlikely that he'd have the killers climb over the fence, as Linda claimed they had. By this time, I had proof that both Watson and Manson had been to 100 Cielo Drive on a number of occasions before the murders, but the jury would never hear it. Some months earlier, I learned that after Terry Melcher had moved out of the residence, but before the Polanskis had moved in, Greg Jacobson had arranged for Dean Morehouse, Ruth Ann Morehouse's father, to stay there for a brief period. During this time, Tex Watson had visited Morehouse at least 3 and possibly as many as 6 times. In a private conversation with Fitzgerald, I informed him of this, which I had a legal obligation to do, and he replied that he already knew it. Though I intended to introduce this evidence during the Watson trial, I didn't want to bring it in during the current proceedings, and I was hoping that Fitzgerald wouldn't either. since it emphasized the Watson rather than the Manson link. Although I suspected that Manson had visited there also during the same period, I had no proof of this until the trial was well underway, when I learned that from the best possible source that Manson had been to Cielo Drive on 5 or 6 occasions. My source was Manson himself, who admitted this to me during one of our rap sessions. Manson denied, however, having been in the house itself. He and Tex went up there, he said, to race doom buggies up and down the hills. But I couldn't use this information against Manson because, as we all knew, all of my conversations with him were at his insistence and he was never advised of his constitutional rights. It was a decidedly curious situation. Although Manson had vowed to kill me, he still asked to see me periodically, to rap. Equally curious were our conversations. Manson told me, for example, that he personally believed in law and order. There should be a rigid control by the authorities, he said. It didn't matter what the law was, right and wrong being relative, but it should be strictly enforced by whoever had the power. And public opinion should be suppressed because part of the people wanted one thing, part another. In other words, your solution would be dictatorship, I remarked. Yes. He had a simple solution to the crime problem, Manson told me. Empty the prisons and banish all the criminals to the desert. But first brand their foreheads with X's so if they ever appeared in the cities, they could be identified and shot on sight. Do I need two guesses as to who's going to be in charge of them in the desert, Charlie? No, he grinned. On another occasion, Manson told me that he had just written to President Nixon, asking him to turn over the reins of power to him. If I was,
Boy.
can you imagine Charles Manson's writing the president? Do you need to give me? I want to be president.
Imagine if Nixon actually received that letter.
Yeah, exactly. That's insane.
Of course, during that time, Nixon was on his own downward spiral. Watergate.
Yeah. Oh my God. If I was interested, I could be his vice president. I was a brilliant prosecutor, he said, a master with his words, and you're right on about a lot of things. What things, Charlie? Helter Skelter? The way the murders came down? Your philosophy on life and death? Manson smiled and declined to answer. We both know you ordered these murders, I told him. Julio, so it's the Beatles. The music they're putting out. They're talking about war. These kids listen to this music and pick up the message. It's subliminal. You were along on the night of Loving Murders. I went on a lot of nights. Never a direct denial. I couldn't wait to get him on the stand. Manson told me that he liked prison, though he liked the desert, the sun, and the woman better. I told him he'd never been inside the green room at San Quentin before. He wasn't afraid of death. Manson responded. Death was only a thought. He'd faced death before many times, in both this and past lives. I asked him if, when he shot Crow, he'd intended to kill him. Sure, he replied, adding, I could kill everyone without blinking an eye. When I asked why, he said, because you've been killing me for years. Pressed as to whether all this killing bothered him, Manson replied that he had no conscience, that everything was only a thought. Only he, and he alone, was on top of his thought, in complete control, unprogrammed by anyone or anything. When it comes down around your ears, you better believe I'll be on
Excuse me.
top of my thought. Manson said, I will know what I am doing. I will know exactly what I am doing. Manson frequently interrupted the testimony of Brooks Poston and Paul Watkins with asides. Kennewick's interruptions were so continuous that Boulder, calling him to the bench, angrily told him, You're trying to disrupt the testimony with frivolous, lengthy, involved, silly objections. You have done it time and time again during this trial. I've studied you very carefully, Mr. Kennewick. I know exactly what you are doing. I have had to find you in contempt twice before for doing the same thing. I won't hesitate to do it again. It was all too obvious to both Kennewick and Manson that Poston and Watkins were impressively strong witnesses. Step by step, they traced the evolution of Helter Skelter, not intellectually as Jacobson understood it, but as one-time true believers, members of the family who had watched a vague concept slowly materialize into terrifying reality. Their cross-examination didn't shake their testimony in the slightest. Rather, it elicited more details. When Kennewick questioned Poston, for example, he accidentally brought out a good domination example. When Charlie would be around, things would be like when a school teacher comes back to class. Hughes asked Poston, Did you feel you were under Mr. Manson's hypnotic spell? No, I did not think that Charlie had a hypnotic spell. Do you feel he had some power? I felt he was Jesus Christ. That is power enough for me. Looking back on this time with Manson, Poston said, I learned a lot from Charlie, but it doesn't seem that he was making all those people free. Watkins observed, Charlie was always preaching love. Charlie had no idea what love was. Charlie was so far from love, it wasn't even funny. Death is Charlie's trip. It really is. Since his extradition to California, Charles Tech Watson had been behaving peculiarly. At first, he spoke little, then stopped speaking entirely. The prisoners in his cell block. So, oh my god!
What?
You burp and piglet.
I was trying to block the sound. I
Holy.
didn't have no time to unmute.
That's what I sound like whenever I drink any type of pause.
Cherry Pepsi.
Oh, that's good stuff. I'm drinking
And
Diet
I'm
Coke.
really sorry on chat that I burped. I tried to hold it.
That was good. The prisoners in his cell block signed a petition complaining of the unsanitary condition of his cell. For hours, he'd stare off into space and inexplicably hurl himself against the cell wall. Placed in restraints, he stopped eating, and even though force-fed, his weight dropped to 110 pounds. Though there was evidence that he was faking at least part of his symptoms, his attorney Sam Bubrick asked the court to appoint 3 psychiatrists to examine him. Their conclusions differed, but they agreed on one point. Watson was rapidly reverting to a fetal state, which, unless immediately treated, could be fatal. Acting on the basis of their examination on October 29th, Judge Dell ruled Watson was at present incompetent to stand trial and ordered him committed to Atascadero State Hospital. Manson asked to see me during the recess. Vince, Manson pleaded through the lockup door. Give me just half an hour of text. I'm positive I can cure him. I'm sorry, Charlie, I told him. I can't afford to take that chance. If you cured him, then everyone would believe you were Jesus Christ. All right, I'm going to read this one more chapter, and then we'll be at part 7, and I'll save that for next week. November 1st, 19th, to the 19th, 1970. The day before Watson was committed to Atascadero, 2 court-appointed psychiatrists found 17-year-old Diane Lake competent to testify. Following her release from Patton, Diane had received some good news. Inyo County investigator Jack Gardner and his wife, who had befriended Diane after the arrest at Barker Raid, had been appointed her foster parents. She would live with them and their children until she finished high school. Because of Miranda, there were some things the jury never heard. For example, that Tex had told Leslie to stab Rosemary LaBianca and later to wipe fingerprints off everything they had touched. Since Katie had released these things to Diane, and any reference by Katie to her co-defendants had to be excised. Diane could testify to what Leslie had told her she had done. However, the problem here was that Leslie never told Diane whom she had stabbed. She said she had stabbed someone who was already dead, that this occurred near Griffith Park, and that there was a boat outside. From these facts, I hope the jury would conclude that she was talking about the LaBiancas. Diane also testified that one morning in August, Leslie had come into the back house at Spawn and proceeded to burn a purse, a credit card, and her own clothing, keeping only a sack of coins, which the girls divided and spent on food. Diane, however, was unable to pinpoint the exact date, and though I hope the jury would surmise this had occurred the morning after the LaBiancas were killed, there was no proof that this was so. Since this was the only evidence, independent of Linda Kasabian's testimony, which I had linking Leslie Van Houten to the LaBianca homicides, it hurt and badly when Hughes on cross brought out that Diane wasn't sure whether Leslie had told her about the boat or whether she had seen it about in papers. Hughes also focused on a number of minor discrepancies in her previous statements. She told Sartucci the coins were in the purse. Well, she told me they were in a plastic bag, and what could have been one very big bombshell. On direct, Diane had said that she, Little Patty, and Sandra Good, I believe, had divided the money. If Sandy was present, this couldn't have been August 10th, the morning after the LaBianca murders, since Sandra Good, along with Mary Brenner, were still in custody. However, questioned further, Diane said Sandy might not have been there. In his cross-examination, Kenrick brought out that Sergeant Gutierrez had threatened Diane with the gas chamber. Fitzgerald also came up with a prior inconsistent statement. Diane had told the grand jury that she was at Inyo County rather than Spawn Ranch on August 8th and 9th. On redirect, I asked Dan, why did you lie to the grand jury? Because I was afraid that I would be killed by members of the family if I told the truth, and Charlie asked me not to. He told me not to say anything to anybody who had the power of authority. On November 4th, Sergeant Gutierrez, in search of a cup of coffee, had wandered into the jury room where the female defendants stayed during the recesses. He found a yellow legal pad with the name Patricia Carmichael on it. Among the notes and doodlings, Katie had written the words Helter Skelter 3 times, misspelling that first word exactly the same way I'd been misspelled on LaBianca's refrigerator door. Older would not permit me to introduce it in evidence, however. I felt he was 100% wrong about this. It was unquestionably circumstantial evidence. It had relevance, and it was admissible, but Older ruled otherwise. Older also gave me a scare when I attempted to introduce Carmichael's refusal to make a printing exemplar. Older agreed it was admissible, but he felt Carmichael should be given another chance to comply in order to do so. The problem here was that this time, Carmichael just might, on the advice of Cancel, make the exemplar, and if she did, I knew there would be real problems. Katie refused on the instructions of Paul Fitzgerald. What Fitzgerald apparently did not realize was that it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, for LAPD to match the two printing examples. And had LAPD failed to do so, by law, Patricia Chronicle would have to be acquitted of the LaBianca murders. Her refusal to give an exemplar was the only speck of independent evidence I had corroborating Kasabian's testimony regarding Carmichael's involvement in these crimes. Carmichael had been an excellent chance to beat the rap. To this day, I still don't understand why her attorney instructed her as he did and lost her that chance. The people's last two witnesses, Doctors Blake and Harold Deering, were the psychiatrists who had examined Diane. On both direct and redirect examination, I elicited testimony from them to reflect that, although a powerful drug, LSD does not impair memory, nor is there any demonstrable medical evidence that it causes brain damage. This was important since the defense attorneys had contended that the minds of various prosecution witnesses, in particular Linda and Diane, had been so blown by LSD that they could not distinguish fantasy from reality. Skirla testified that people on LSD can tell the difference between the real and the unreal. In fact, they often have a heightened awareness. Skirla further stated that LSD causes illusions rather than hallucinations. In other words, that which is seen is actually there, only the perception of it is changed. This surprised a lot of people since LSD is called a hallucinogenic drug. When Watkins was on the stand, I personally brought out that although he was only 20, Paul had taken LSD between 150 and 200 times. Yet, as the jury undoubtedly observed, he was one of the brightest and most articulate of the prosecution witnesses. Scarlett also testified, I've seen individuals who have taken it several hundred times and showed no outward sign of any emotional disturbance while they are not on the drug. Fitzgerald asked Scarlett, would LSD in large doses over a period of time make someone sort of a zombie, or would it destroy a rational thought process? If, as I suspected, Fitzgerald was trying to lay the foundation for a defense base on the premises, that foundation collapsed when Scarlett replied, I have not seen this, Counsel. Dr. Deering was the people's last witness. He finished testifying on Friday, November 13th. Most of Monday, the 16th, was spent introducing the people's exhibits into evidence. There was 220 of these, and Kenrick objected to every one, from the gun to the scale map of the tape premises. His strongest objections were to the colored death photos. Responding, I argued, I grant the court that these photographs are gruesome. There's no question about it. But if in fact the defendants are the ones who committed these murders, which the prosecution of course is alleging, they are the ones who are responsible for the gruesomeness and the ghastliness. It is their handiwork. The jury is entitled to look at what handiwork. Judge Older agreed, and they were admitted into evidence. One exhibit never made it into evidence. As mentioned earlier, a number of white dog hairs have been found on the discarded clothing the killers wore the night of the Tate murders. Shown them, Winifred Chapman told me they looked like the hair of Sharon's dog. When I requested that they be brought over from LAPD, however, I got only excuses. Finally, I learned that while walking across the street to the Hall of Justice, one of the Tate detectives had dropped and broken the vial containing the hairs. He had been able to recover only one. Realizing that the expression grasping at hairs would be all too appropriate in this case, I decided against introducing that single hair into evidence. At 4:27 p.m. that Monday, exactly 22 weeks after the start of the trial and 2 days short of a year after my assignment to the case, I told the court, Your Honor, the people of the state of California rest. The court was recessed until Thursday, November 19th, at which time each of the defense attorneys argued the standard motions to dismiss. Back in December 1969, a great many attorneys predicted that when we reached this point, Manson would have to be acquitted because of insufficiency of evidence. I doubted if any lawyer in the country felt that way now, including the attorneys for the defense. Older denied all the motions. The court, are you ready to proceed with the defense? Yes, Your Honor. You may call your first witness, Mr. Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald, thank you, Your Honor. The defendant's rest. Nearly everyone in the courtroom was caught completely off guard. For several seconds, even Judge Older seemed too stunned to speak. The ultimate legal issue at a criminal trial is not the defendant's guilt or innocence, as most people believe. The issue is whether or not the prosecution has met its legal burden of proving the guilt of the defendant beyond a reasonable doubt and to moral certainty. The defense obviously felt they had already put on their defense through cross-examination of a witness as common defense strategy and had decided to avoid cross-examination by the prosecution of their witnesses and rely on the argument that we hadn't proved the guilt of Manson and his co-defendants beyond a reasonable doubt. Hence, they were entitled to not guilty verdicts. Since Linda Kasabian was an accomplice, I knew they would also argue and allege that under Section 1111 of the California Penal Code, a conviction cannot be had upon the testimony of the accomplice unless independently corroborated by other evidence, and that was not done here. The biggest surprise, however, was still to come. That will be next Thursday because my throat is killing me. Anybody got any questions or anything? Or do you have anything you want to say or anything, Brittany? Tired today.
Not really.
Yeah, I'm just tired. I'm ready for this book to be over. I mean, I don't know. It's not. I don't know. Like, it's not one of those books that I can't put down. You know what I mean? There's a lot of
I get like that too. Like if it's a good book, I can't stay away from it.
yeah, like the one I was reading on Adam Walsh. I couldn't get enough of it. Like I just wanted to read it. I haven't read it. I'm waiting with you guys, but I definitely want to, but I won't. But with this one, it's like it's hard to get back into it again. It's so long and so much, and there's a lot of legal speak that I don't understand. And I don't know. I wouldn't read it again. I'll tell you that much. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just once enough. Once is enough for me. You know. At least I'm almost done. There is that's one thing I do like, Melanie, is that there is a lot in here in this book that I didn't even know at all. Um, that's one thing. It is horrid, autistic, absolutely. Like I read all that at the beginning, and now it's just more mumbo jumbo legal speak.
Yeah,
I
like
find it kind of boring.
yeah, the people that were Susan was describing, those are like people that like Sharon had a group of friends. They all integrated with each other.
Yeah.
Because some of them they started in movies together. They pretty much hung out together at each other's houses.
Yeah, they were close, right?
Yeah, like
It is horrible what happened, though. I mean, I've already read all through that. It's just I find that the court proceedings is kind of boring. The only part that I really like is when Kenrick screws up, and it's really heavy too. It is very heavy. It's like, oh my god. There's parts that I'll read. I'm like, holy crap! I can't believe I just said that, or that actually happened. I mean, wanting to be president, he's telling the president to step aside. What an idiot! Yeah, it's
yeah,
heavy.
there's like rules down here in the United States about presidency. It goes if the president can't do his job or dies within his job, goes
Yeah,
to the vice president and then to the speaker to the house.
that's sick though. They purposely killed Sharon, like the last left her for last so she could watch every single one of her friends die. That's just disgusting. No wonder her spirit haunts that ground. Well, that's okay, Deb. I did put I can't remember who told me it, but I did put all of this Helter Skelter in one book. And oh my god, I'm tired. I put all of these readings I'm doing, all these lives on Helter Skelter, I put them into one playlist. Yeah, huge ego. And then I've got one for Adam Walsh as well. So I've made playlists so it's easier for people to find.
Can't wait and look forward for the sharks.
I know that was so funny. That was so funny. And like even with these heavy books, you know, I mean, at least this one it's got that stupid ass lawyer Canarak, right? Like he's always doing or saying something, always getting put in jail. Like there's always something with him, right? So I mean, at least we get
I
to
don't
laugh.
know whether, yeah, it's like I don't know whether to think that John was probably in an acid high.
Maybe not.
started imagining attacking sharks.
And jellyfish and leaving his pregnant wife with this chick who can't even swim. Ooh, I wonder what happened there. Yeah, it was just unbelievable. He's totally, yeah. I think it's going to be bad though when I read it again because it's now we're at the part of Adam. It's called Adam, so I'm sure it's going to be really sad. Oh, I know it will be really sad if it's got his name in it, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be hard. I have it for tomorrow. I just don't know if I'm going to do it tomorrow because I haven't been able to get a hold of Sayla yet.
Excuse me. I never do this with Coke. But with Pepsi, it's like hell on wheels.
That's funny because I think, well, Coke is more fizzy. I find Pepsi's more flat.
Yeah, because I went down to the store today and Pepsi products were on sale, so I got a couple Pepsi products instead of Coke. Coke wasn't even on sale, and
Yeah. I prefer Coke, but if Pepsi's on sale, I'll get something. Like I can't drink their Diet Pepsi. It tastes, I don't know what it is. I can't do it, but I can drink Diet Coke. It's weird. All right, well, if you
yeah,
guys don't
that
have questions or anything, I'm going to get off of here because I am so tired. I just walked like over 2 miles today. Never again. You don't think Coke's as strong? Really? I don't know. I always thought Coke was, Pepsi's more flat. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I burp like crazy whenever I drink Coke. I can't believe you didn't catch me burping. I had to really hold it in and then it come out my nose and burnt my freaking nose and made my eyes water. I didn't pull a Britney, but shit.
sorry.
No, it's okay. That was funny. It was good to lighten the mood a bit.
Yeah, next thing you know, my husband comes up with a bottle of vodka, and the next thing he goes like he was like looking at his phone. He goes like, "Elizabeth is dead. I'm gonna go to my room now." I was like,
Aww.
and he goes like, I was like, "Honey, just wait until we get home, then you can."
I'm gonna go drown my sorrows in some vodka with the queen
Yeah,
dead. Oh my
and watch The Crown.
god. Wow. It's funny actually. I got a message today from my son's father, and he's like, "Mom's pissed." I'm like, "Okay, what did I do?" He goes, "The queen's passed on. She's pissed." I'm like, "What are you telling me for?" I'm like, "It's really sad, yeah. I mean that sucks, and I don't like who's going to be king, Charles or whatever." He goes, "She's pissed. She hates Charles." It's like, what do you want me to do about it? I can't. Fine, she's mad. But don't bring her over here.
I'd rather see William as king.
Same. That's who I was
That
hoping.
way we can have a hot king and still.
Yeah. Like I think it would
I
have been.
mean, he's 40 and he's still looking good.
Yeah. That's what I was hoping they would. He would become king, not Charles. I don't know. He cheated on Diana, and I just. I don't know. I've never liked him. At least it's not Henry.
I After he got with Megan, he changed.
You think he's changed?
Yeah.
No, thank you, Crystal. Yes, Nancy, I couldn't agree with you more, honestly. Every time I'm reading something, I just want to comment and be like, how stupid are these cops, honestly? They really screwed up. And what I don't like either with this case is how they keep dismissing all this evidence and conversations. I mean, I think that would really help. Like, I know that they were sentenced, they went to prison and everything, but even still, I think a lot of those should have been kept in because I don't think they came off as dangerous as they really were. Ah, I get you. Coke has more fizz, but Pepsi has a stronger flavor. Yeah, I can agree with that too. Ugh, Camilla. Ugh. Yeah, Henry and Camilla. Can you imagine if he became king? Oh hell no. No, I should have been William.
Well, he's gonna be waiting for Harry to become king. He's gonna be waiting a while,
Mm-hmm.
a very long while,
Yeah.
because they have they have a succession. So if George has kids, Charlotte will be bumped down
Oh wow.
since they changed the rules to include Charlotte, the female heirs first, along the lines of succession and birth order.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm threatening the judge. Like he climbed over where he was sitting. Just imagine this little bastard. Like he's very
5 foot
dangerous.
2 and just
Mm-hmm. Crazy eyes, wild hair, trying to kill the judge. I mean,
they
wow.
probably did cut his like I seen footage of them have it with his haircut already.
Yeah. Then he shaved his head.
Yeah, that just looked weird.
He definitely has
Especially
crazy eyes.
yeah, especially with a bald head. It's like holy shit.
What I didn't understand either is the judge kept allowing all the women in there. He should have never allowed them back. They're very disrespectful. They clearly don't give a shit. And they were constantly mimicking Manson of everything he did. And you know what I mean? Like, I don't know why they were allowed in the court to begin with. Only when it was their turn, when they were called up to the stand, should be the only way they were allowed up. I think they should have been locked away until then. They shouldn't even be allowed, anywhere near that trial until they needed to be called up. I just don't think so. They had enough chances, and so did Charlie. I think they should have just locked him away.
Yeah, like here in the U.S., there's a movie called Charlie Says.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically about the girls,
Might have to
the
watch that.
the three main girls, Patricia, Susan, and Leslie.
Yeah,
Well, they had this woman. She comes in to see them every day to help them to realize what they had done.
yeah,
It's on Netflix here in the U.S., but I don't know about Canada up there.
probably not. You guys always get the better shit. Always. It was. Yeah, they definitely are mentally sick. I used to like William, but now I know he's racist. I don't like him. I feel for Prince Harry. Really? I didn't know he was racist. I don't really follow anything to do about, you know, the Queen or anything like that. I mean, yeah, I look and see whenever they have babies, how they're doing every now and then, but I don't like, it's not on my radar. It's not something I'm interested in. My God, this guy in his car, my neighbor, I'm telling you, he does it on purpose to piss me off. He just seen my face on his way home. And I'm in there looking out the window. I'm glaring at him. I'm like, oh, there he goes again, revving the stupid thing. Does it at all hours of the night. There's no point of doing that. I mean, kids got school, people got to sleep. You don't need to be revving your engine like an idiot.
Yeah,
It shakes my walls. My room is right beside that house. Can you hear it at all? It's like, wow, like, wow.
barely.
I have my windows shut now. Yeah, I hear you, Nancy. I only found out when reading a news report sometime early this year. Oh, wow. Megan claims they're all racist. She can't face that it's her, not her race. Yeah.
Not to mention she came from Hollywood, and plus she was divorced a couple times.
Yeah, and she's already been in the movies, right? Unless
Yeah.
she, yeah. I don't like her. Um, I wish Henry would get his act together, but then again, I don't know everything, and there's always two sides to every story, so I don't know. I can't really say much. I'm gonna go though. I'm tired as hell. Your
Yeah,
neighborhood
I'm gonna
is
get
great.
going.
Yeah, I'm tired. I'm starting to feel slowly. What time is it? Oh my god, it's only 8:30. Feels like 1 in the morning for me, but it's not. I think it's because I just, well, like I said, I walked my ass all over these streets today, over 2 miles. I had to grab a couple things. Holy crap! Never again. I mean, I'll still walk, but not that much. Yeah, you're not a fan. Well, thanks for joining me, and I will see you. What, Thursday? Thursday again. Then we gotta pick me
Yeah.
up. Crystal, I don't know. I prefer a Hollywood divorcee to a home wrecker. That's just. All right. You guys have a great night.
Good night, y'all.
Bye.